What's up, everybody? Today I am here to talk about Harry Potter. Now, Harry Potter is a franchise that I grew up with only having experienced the movies. I watched all the movies as a kid, and I have good memories of going to see the last three movies, I think, which were Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, and then both parts of the Deathly Hallows in theaters with my brothers and with my dad. Good memories seeing those movies in the theaters. However, I never read the books growing up. Not really sure why. I was always a big reader, even as a kid. I read a ton just for whatever reason. I never attempted to read the books when I was a kid. I'm not really sure why, but yeah, I finally just recently finished reading through the entire Harry Potter series for my first time, and I thought I'd just make a quick video talking about the series a little bit. This is going to be kind of an off the cuff type video. I didn't really go into this with any sort of plan. I did not plan on doing like any individual reviews for these books or anything of the sort. I'm just going to kind of be sharing my thoughts on the series as a whole, maybe comparing it to the movies a little bit, and then also attempting like a ranking of these books at the end of this video. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. So I started reading the Harry Potter series late last year. I think like around the fall, like September, October. And I just finished it here in April. I read the last book, The Deathly Hallows, a few days ago. And I greatly enjoyed this series. I don't know why it took me so long to read through this franchise. I can officially say that I'm a Harry Potter fan now, along with, most other people out there who have read all of these books long ago. And yeah, so the first book, The Sorcerer's Stone, I guess I'll just kind of go through each book somewhat briefly, maybe compare it to the movie a little bit and share my thoughts on each one. So the very first book, The Sorcerer's Stone, I really enjoyed. It has a lot of charm and humor to it. It's definitely more obviously targeted towards the younger audience. Naturally, as the books progress and the characters get older, they become a lot more darker and more mature, and there's less of like that charm and humor in the books. But The Sorcerer's Stone, I greatly enjoyed. And I remember reading somewhere that J.K. Rowling took a lot of influence from Roald Dahl and his books. And I can clearly see that, especially with the Dursley family, which Harry lives with, and we spend quite a bit of time with earlier in the book with them. And I really enjoyed reading about his time with the Dursley family, even though they are not very nice people. They are very cruel to Harry. They try to pretend like magic isn't real. They act like it's some evil thing, but they're just so over the top and cartoonish about it. And it's just a very fun, like kind of mean spirited type of thing, I guess. Just like very exaggerated. And yeah, it comes off as very humorous to me. I really enjoyed the time we spent with the Dursley family, even though they're all kind of jerks. And I really enjoyed seeing the introduction into this world, even though, again, I have seen the movies, obviously. I enjoyed seeing the introduction to this world for the first time in the books. We get more of a clear picture of that. Obviously, the books are more detailed, and there's a lot of things in here that you don't necessarily see in the movies. However, the first book, The Sorcerer's Stone, is the shortest of them at only like a little over 300 pages, if I'm remembering right. And I think out of all of the books, I think The Sorcerer's Stone was adapted the most faithfully, along with Chamber of Secrets. These first two books, I think, the movie adaptations were pretty accurate to the source material. There's not a lot that's left out. And so, yeah, The Sorcerer's Stone, I really enjoyed it. Not really anything bad to say. I thought it was a pretty good book. It just lacks some of that, I guess, just more serious plot to it, and intrigue and mystery and intensity that the later books have, which is why I didn't end up loving it and giving it like a perfect 5 out of 5 stars. But yeah, I thought it was pretty great. And then the Chamber of Secrets, I really enjoyed this one as well. This one I think I enjoyed slightly less than Sorcerer's Stone though, and I'm not even really sure why. Again, this one was also pretty accurate to the movie. There wasn't a lot in this book that was like really new to me or that just caught me off guard. A lot of it that I read in the Chamber of Secrets, I remember seeing in the movie beforehand. And it was a little bit longer. I think the Chamber of Secrets is closer to like 350 pages, whereas the Sorcerer's Stone was like just barely over 300, I think, somewhere around there. And Chamber of Secrets was also really good. I didn't quite love it though. I think I enjoyed Sorcerer's Stone slightly more. And yeah, and then The Prisoner of Azkaban, I was really excited and curious to check this one out because I always remember The Prisoner of Azkaban movie being like my favorite of the entire franchise. I'm currently rewatching through the movies, and I don't know if that will hold true or not, if it will remain my favorite. I'm only up to Chamber of Secrets right now. I'm about to rewatch Prisoner of Azkaban here very soon. So I don't know if it will remain my favorite movie, but I always remember it being one of my favorites. And so I was very curious to check the book out. And this is where we start getting into some differences. There's quite a bit of different stuff that happens in the book versus the movie. However, I still really enjoyed Prisoner of Azkaban. I gave that one like a 4.25 out of 5. And I think it is my favorite book up to this point. I enjoyed it more than Chamber of Secrets and Sorcerer's Stone. I love Sirius Black. I love the mystery surrounding his character, how he appears to be some like deranged villainous character at first who is out to get Harry. And it turns out that he is Harry's godfather all along and is out to protect and save Harry. And he has been wrongfully imprisoned in Azkaban. And yeah, that whole plot line is just amazing. I love it. And Professor Lupin is also a great character. And yeah, there's just a lot of really great things about Prisoner of Azkaban. It starts to get into the little bit more like mature side of things with that book. The characters start getting a little bit older. There's some pretty dark stuff that happens in Prisoner of Azkaban. It's a bit more violent, but it still holds on to that charm and humor a little bit of the first two books. You know, we're not quite to the level of intensity that we get to in the later books, but yeah, Prisoner of Azkaban is definitely one of my favorites, both in the movie and the book version. Actually, I have the books right here. I don't know why I'm not showing them off. Yeah, right here's The Prisoner of Azkaban. Going off on a little bit of a tangent here, I actually need to replace this copy of it because for some reason it's shorter than all the other hardcover copies of my Harry Potter books by like an inch. I don't know how well you guys can see that. I don't know why. All my other Harry Potter books are the same size except for this one. So I need to find a replacement copy for this because it really bothers me. And then I'm also missing, a Sorcerer's Stone too. I don't have that one yet at all. Again, I don't know why. I need to just hurry up and find these because it annoys me that I have, all but 2 of the Harry Potter books in my collection. So yeah, or all but 1 technically, but I got to get a replacement for this one. So yeah, that's The Prisoner of Azkaban. I really enjoyed this one. I will say though, I think there are some parts of the movie that are actually better than the books. Just certain aspects that I think are done better in the movie versions. And this applies for some of the other books as well, which I'll be talking about. But for Prisoner of Azkaban specifically, and I will be talking about spoilers a little bit in this video, but I'm assuming most of you have probably seen or Harry Potter or read the books at this point, so I'm not too worried about that. But anyway, at the end of this book, or not at the end, but like during like the main climax of this book, when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are in the Shrieking Shack, the famous Shrieking Shack scene with Snape and Lupin and Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew, and they're all in this Shrieking Shack. And Harry learns the truth about who Sirius Black is, and then they also learn the truth about Ron's pet rat, who is actually Peter Pettigrew in disguise. And I think the movie did this scene a little bit better. In the book, this scene goes on for so very long. Snape isn't really in the know about what's going on. He rushes into the shack to try to apprehend Sirius Black. He's still under the impression that Sirius Black is a villain and out to harm Harry. And he rushes into the shack, and they knock Snape out with, some kind of spell. And Snape is knocked unconscious for like an unrealistically large amount of time, like half an hour or something, while we get like a full 30-page chapter of just Sirius Black and Professor Lupin just info dumping and giving this huge backstory about what actually happened to Sirius Black, why he was imprisoned, them talking about Peter Pettigrew, Ron's rat. And yeah, and it goes on forever. And it just feels like a massive info dump. And it feels a bit unrealistic that Snape is just casually just snoozing on the floor while all of this is going on. And yeah, while this is, a good and very crucial scene in this book and, in the series as a whole. I think the movie did it a little bit better because in the movie version, it was really condensed down. And yeah, it didn't need to be as long as it was in the book. I'm like, okay, when are they going to stop talking and going into so much detail about this? Like, we get the picture. So yeah, there's other examples I'll get to, further in this series. But I think there's just certain scenes here and there that the movie version actually did better. But overall, I do think I like the books more. As is usual with the case, the source material is almost always better than whatever adaptations come out of it. But yeah, that's The Prisoner of Azkaban. And then moving on to The Goblet of Fire, book number 4 in the series. And this is also one that I was very curious about because I remember not being a big fan of the Goblet of Fire movie. And I'll have to rewatch it and see how my opinion is of it upon rewatch. But yeah, for whatever reason, I never really liked the Goblet of Fire movie all that much. It was always like my least favorite movie in the entire franchise. And when I read this book, I immediately thought that this is going to be one of my favorite books of the entire franchise. This is where there starts to be a lot of differences between the film and the book. This book is just very, very different. There's a lot of small changes, really. Nothing like huge necessarily. Not like any big differences that are like completely plot altering, I guess, or anything like that. But it's just a lot of small changes here and there that kind of add up and make it feel like there's a lot of differences. And it also just feels very different, like tonally and like the whole vibe of it. I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but yeah, this one is quite a bit different from the movie. And I loved the book version of Goblet of Fire. This book was awesome. This book also hangs on to some of that humor and charm and wit and, these goofy character interactions and shenanigans they get into. Within like the first few books, we see a lot of that. It kind of hangs on to that a little bit in this one. But we also starting to get into very dark territory with the Goblet of Fire, especially during the Triwizard Tournament. And then, of course, in the very explosive climax and final act of this book, which is just amazing, just jaw-dropping. What happens at the end of this book when Harry goes through the labyrinth maze and then is transported to Voldemort's cauldron, where Voldemort basically uses part of Harry to resurrect himself? It is just absolutely intense, insane. There are some deaths in this book. I can't remember. I don't think there were any like big character deaths in the first couple books. They were pretty tame for the most part. There's some pretty big character deaths in this book. This is where things start getting real. So yeah, I absolutely love Goblet of Fire. This book was so much fun. Very different from the movie. One scene that I think the movie did better in Goblet of Fire is during the first task in the Triwizard Tournament. Harry has to go up against this big dragon and capture this item. And in the book, Harry basically uses some kind of spell to distract the dragon, if I remember correctly. And then he swoops in on his broom to grab this item that he has to collect and then flies away. And the task is over. He completes it, accomplishes his mission within like 5 minutes. And it doesn't even feel like much of a challenge. I'm like, okay, that's it. That was easy. Whereas in the movie, the dragon breaks free of his chain and is chasing Harry all around the castle of Hogwarts. And it is much more action-packed and intense and just a lot more fun. And yeah, I'm not really sure who like come up with that creative decision to change the tasks a little bit in the movie. That is the one thing that I think the movie did better, though. That first task with the dragon was just a lot more entertaining in the movie version. In the book, Harry goes up against this dragon and completes the task within 5 minutes. It doesn't even seem like it's a big deal. So yeah, just one minor thing there. But other than that, the book was incredible. Much better than the film. Moving on to book number 5, The Order of the Phoenix. This is one that I think the movie might be a little bit better. So don't get me wrong. I did enjoy this book. I don't think there's any book in this series that I did not like at all. I still give this a solid 4 out of 5 stars. But this one might be my least favorite Harry Potter book, in kind of close contest with one other, which I'll talk about when I get to my ranking. But yeah, the reason I wasn't as big of a fan of this one is because of how padded it is. This is the longest Harry Potter book in the franchise, with my copy of it clocking in at, if I can flip to it, 870 pages. This book is almost 900 pages long. And I have no problem with longer books, you know, if the book merits that length, if it utilizes that page space well, if it's compelling enough throughout. This book was not that. This book did not need to be 900 pages long. It is so padded. There is so much dialogue in this book that there were times where, I'm not going to lie, I was starting to get a little bit bored. There was a lot to wade through in this book. Just a lot of dialogue and meandering scenes and repetitiveness and characters just kind of going over the same plot points over and over again. And one other thing that kind of annoyed me about this one too is a lot of the dialogue was all in caps lock, and that really annoyed me for some reason. I don't want to read an entire page of characters yelling and have the author show them yelling by putting their dialogue all in capital letters. That's not necessary in my opinion. You don't need to have that. So yeah, that kind of annoyed me a little bit. And there's quite a bit of that throughout the book, quite a bit of yelling. This is a very angry book. Harry Potter is kind of going through like his angsty teenager phase in here, where he's just sort of pissed off at the world. And he's very mean to like even his friends, Ron and Hermione. There's a lot of discord between them. And yeah, despite my negatives with this book though, I still greatly enjoyed it. This book has a very explosive opening. There's action like almost as soon as this book starts, as him and Dudley Dursley are pitted against the Dementors. And then of course this book has one of the most explosive climaxes out of any of the Harry Potter books. You thought the ending of Goblet of Fire was pretty intense, where Voldemort is resurrected. This book goes one step further. There's like this huge battle at the Ministry of Magic between Harry and his friends versus all of these Death Eaters, and it is just insane. And again, things are kicked up a notch even further with this one. There's some more character deaths, some very intense moments. And yeah, this book was awesome. I still enjoyed it even with its flaws. It just did not quite need to be as long as it was. But the final act and like the beginning of this book, just absolutely incredible. But yeah, I think the movie version of this one might be a little bit better just because it's more condensed and cuts out a lot of that fluff. I'll have to rewatch it to say for sure. And then of course this book also features the villain that you love to hate the most, Dolores Umbridge. Man, I tell you what, Dolores Umbridge makes Voldemort look like a saint. Dolores Umbridge is just horrible, just an awful person. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Order of the Phoenix. All right, and then book number 6, The Half-Blood Prince. I'm just going to say right off the bat, this one is probably my favorite book of the entire franchise. I absolutely loved The Half-Blood Prince. This book to me has a perfect blend of that humor and charm of like the magical world and the character interactions and the shenanigans they get into at Hogwarts, combined with this darker element of the story, this sort of kind of dark foreboding and like foreshadowing that's going on throughout this book leading up into the Deathly Hallows. This book has a lot of atmosphere to it. It's kind of creepy at times. But there's just something about it that mixes those two elements so well. And this book was nearly perfect for me. I absolutely loved The Half-Blood Prince. And this is one that I definitely think I like more than the movie. Again, I'll have to rewatch the movies to say for sure. Maybe I'll do a separate video talking about the movies more when I finish rewatching those. But this is one I think I definitely like more than the movie. I absolutely love this book. I really don't have anything negative to say about it. I gave it a 4.75 out of 5. Not quite perfect. This one does kind of have a basic, more linear plot to it than some of these other ones. Maybe that's a good thing. This one's a bit more straightforward. This one is only like 600 pages, a little over 600 pages, so it's a lot more lean than Order of the Phoenix. There's not much wasted page space in here. Yes, we do get a lot of just character interactions and dialogue in this book as well. The whole middle of this book, besides like the main mystery going on in regards to the Half-Blood Prince and who he is, and this like spell book with the diary entries in it that Harry is using for his potions class. Besides this like main mystery going on, there's really not a ton of like eventful stuff happening in this book throughout. It is, I guess, sort of meandering a little bit, but there's just something about it that's still entertaining to read. Just all of the various character interactions. We get a lot of character development in this book. One is also where we start to get into the romance stuff a little bit between Ron and Hermione, and then Harry and Ginny a little bit. And this one just held my attention throughout. I really enjoyed the Half-Blood Prince. Really no negatives to say with this one. And then, of course, the ending to this one, again, J.K. Rowling is also delivering just a massive blow with this book. Some big character deaths in here. Some pretty intense and dark stuff happens at the end. And yeah, the Half-Blood Prince. I absolutely love this one. And then the very final book, The Deathly Hallows. This is the only book to receive 2 movie adaptations, like a 2-part movie instead of 1. And this one is also a pretty long book. This one's like 750 pages. And kind of like Goblet of Fire, this book is very different from the movies. And I figured going into this, with having like a 2-part movie for this, I figured it would be pretty accurate. And, they would make 2 parts out of it to try to stay faithful to the source material, have more time to fit everything in here into the movies. But that is not the case. This one really shocked me with how different it is. I think some of the changes are for the better, if I'm being honest. At the end, again, kind of getting into spoiler territory here, at the very end, during the big battle of Hogwarts and the big fight scene between Harry and Voldemort, from memory, I think the movie did it a little bit better. There's a much more of a focus on the action and the violence at the climax, and the movie is just more entertaining to watch in that regards. During the final battle between Harry and Voldemort in the book, it lasts like 2 minutes. Harry and Voldemort cast like a single spell at each other, and then Voldemort just like drops dead, and that's it. That's all that happens in the book. So the movie, I think, handles that action at the end a little bit more, takes some creative liberties that are for the better and make the story a little bit more exciting. But in the book, however, we do get a lot more explanation behind things, behind the Horcruxes and the Deathly Hallows, and exactly how these 2 things tie together, how Harry and Voldemort's relationship, how those characters are sort of tied together, and how Voldemort has like a piece of his soul living inside of Harry. The book just goes in a lot more detail and explains these things a lot more. One negative too that I have with the Deathly Hallows is the pacing in this book is so off. I think this one has the worst pacing out of any of the Harry Potter books. And what I mean by that is the first 500 pages of this book is spent looking for a single Horcrux. So for those of you who might not know, I guess who might not have read these yet or seen the movies, or just might not have a lot of experience with these books for whatever reason, Harry and his friends basically have to search for these Horcruxes to essentially destroy Voldemort. There are 7 Horcruxes, and Voldemort has cast this evil dark spell that basically puts a piece of his soul inside of a certain object, and these objects are hidden throughout the world, and Harry and his friends basically have to find these objects and destroy them in order to destroy Voldemort. And the first 500 pages of this book is spent just learning about the Horcruxes and trying to find one, just one. And then the last 3 to 4 Horcruxes, there were a few destroyed earlier in the series. The last 3 to 4 are all destroyed within the last 100, 200 pages. So this book just suffers from terrible pacing, in my opinion. It's very, very slow in the first half. And then it just felt like there was too much crammed into the final 200 pages. I don't know if J.K. Rowling was experiencing a little bit of fatigue with this book by the time she got to the finale and wanted to hurry up and finish it. I think it felt just a little bit rushed. I would have liked to have the ending and climax of this book a little bit more drawn out, especially with a lot of the action at the end and the Battle of Hogwarts, which is supposed to be the most epic, most epic part of this whole series, where you have all of these Death Eaters and giants and various creatures attacking Hogwarts and all of the students and teachers trying to defend it. The book just feels like it didn't deliver enough in that aspect for me. I was slightly let down by it. And yeah, I think the movie handled some things better in that regards. However, I still did really enjoy this book. One other thing too I want to mention is we do get some more of the romance stuff in here, which, I don't mind that. I kind of like that J.K. Rowling set up these relationships. One thing I do also want to mention, I'm kind of just going off on tangents here. I think Rowling does a very good job at creating characters in this series. I feel like that's her strongest point with these Harry Potter books, as a matter of fact. She just does an excellent job of creating these characters. They are so believable, so lifelike. All of the characters in this series, Harry, Ron, Hermione, Dumbledore, Snape, all of these characters just have such a distinct personality. Their names even are kind of unique, and it makes the characters stand out a lot more. And how they interact with one another and their relationships. I think J.K. Rowling just does an absolutely fantastic job at creating characters in this series, and you care about all of them like they're real people almost. I think that's her greatest strength as a writer, is characterization. And kind of going off of that, I think the romance stuff, I liked her decisions that she made about pairing certain characters with each other, but I don't think the romance is always written in the best way. And I think this Deathly Hallows book is kind of a good example of that. There's not a lot of interaction we see between Ginny and Harry in this book, and I think the movie actually does it slightly better. Again, just another example where the movie takes some creative liberties that I think improve the story a little bit. Because at the end of the book, Harry and Ginny end up together, married, shows them like in the future, 20 years after all of this stuff happens with Voldemort, and they have kids together. But it doesn't feel the most convincing. It feels a little bit tacked on at the end and out of place. Whereas in the movie version, I think we get a little bit more interaction between these two characters. There's even a scene where Harry and Ginny like are kissing, and it's kind of romantic, I guess, in the movie. That doesn't even happen in this book, like at all. So, and I've heard some people, just out of curiosity, like I've done some research on the internet to see what people's opinions are on the book versus the movies and things like that. And I've seen some people criticize the movies and say that things like the characterization and romance is done much better in the books. And I will agree that with that for the characterization, but for the romance, I cannot agree with that. A lot of people say that the romance in the movies is kind of clumsy and just feels out of place and isn't the most well written. And I would agree with that. You are right. However, I think the reason it's like that is because it wasn't well written in the books either. You can fight me about that if you want, but yeah. The romance, even though J.K. Rowling does a great job at creating these characters, she just doesn't do the best job at writing the relationships between them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah. So, for the Deathly Hallows overall, this was a fantastic book. I do think I liked it slightly more than the movie, but there's just some aspects of the movie that were a little bit more epic, especially in regards to part 2 with the final battle of Hogwarts. The book just didn't quite deliver that punch that I was looking for. And again, the pacing was just kind of off on this one. But it was still really good. I gave it like a solid 4.25 out of 5. And it was still a very satisfying conclusion to this series as a whole, even if it wasn't quite perfect. So yeah, that's the Deathly Hallows. Okay, I'm going to attempt to do kind of a quick ranking here. I think I have it figured out about how what I like these books, least favorite to favorite. And the first two at the bottom, we'll be going from least favorite to favorite here. These two at the bottom are kind of tied. But I think for my least favorite, I'm going to be putting The Chamber of Secrets at the bottom. Again, none of these books I dislike. Chamber of Secrets, I still greatly enjoyed. I give this one like a solid 4 out of 5 stars. There was just something about this one. I'm not even exactly sure what it was, to be honest with you. There's just something about it that I didn't quite enjoy as much as the others. So yeah, I'm kind of putting this one at the bottom. Chamber of Secrets, still a fantastic book, 4 out of 5 stars. Just above that, but kind of tied with it, is Order of the Phoenix. Also a 4 out of 5 stars for this one. Again, this book was just too damn long. It did not need to be almost 900 pages in length. There was some amazing stuff in here, but a lot of the middle of this book and some of the dialogue-heavy sections, a lot of that feels like it could have just been cut out. I think this book could have been shaved down to like 600 to 700 pages, and this book would not have suffered at all. The story would be the same. So yeah, Order of the Phoenix comes in at number, how many books are there? 7 or 6? I don't even know. I can't even think straight right now. But yeah, Order of the Phoenix, that's like my second to the bottom. And then next, let me see here. I didn't really put a lot of thought into this ranking, if I'm being honest. The next one is probably the Sorcerer's Stone, which is the only one that I'm missing from my collection. But yeah, the Sorcerer's Stone, I give that one like a 4.25 out of 5. Really enjoyed that one. great introduction into the world of Harry Potter. A lot of charming humor to it. It just lacks some more of that seriousness of the later books and isn't quite as exciting. So yeah, that one is probably the next one in my ranking. And then right after that, I would say The Prisoner of Azkaban. This one I also give like a 4.25 out of 5. This was a pretty great book. Not a lot of bad things to say about it. I don't know, didn't quite love it. It wasn't quite perfect. And then the next one is probably The Deathly Hallows. Actually, you know what? I think I might have liked Prisoner of Azkaban more than Deathly Hallows. I don't even know what I'm doing. It's so difficult to rank these books. I like these books all pretty close to the same. It's really hard to decide between them. This one, I think I put as high as I do, though. This one is also like a 4.25 out of 5. Just because it's the conclusion to the series. It's epic. You know, maybe not quite as perfect or as epic as I was hoping, but it still has a lot of that epic, just intense action at the end and violence. There's a lot of character deaths in this book. And yeah, it's still an awesome finale to the series, even though I did mention that I have a lot of issues with it. But yeah, that's The Deathly Hallows. And then my top 2 books in the series. My second to my favorite one is The Goblet of Fire. I give this one probably a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I love this book. Very different from the movie. Much, much better than the movie version. And yeah, I absolutely love The Goblet of Fire. This book was awesome. And then my absolute favorite Harry Potter book, coming in at number 1, is The Half-Blood Prince. I give this one a 4.75 out of 5. I read this book, I forgot to mention it earlier, but I read this book in like 2.5 days. This book is, what was it, 650 pages, I think I said. Yeah, this book is about 650 pages, and I just powered through this thing in like 2.5 days. Like, I could not put this book down. This book was just compelling to me all the way through. I couldn't stop reading it. And yeah, this is my favorite one. Okay, enough rambling about Harry Potter. I'm glad to say I'm officially a Harry Potter fan now. I've always loved the movies. I finally read the books. And as a whole, the books are definitely better. And yeah, if you guys are fellow Harry Potter fans, let me know down in the comments what your favorite books are. Or if you have like a ranking of the series, go ahead and post it down below. I would love to hear all of your thoughts. I'm done rambling about this series for today. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.